Once there was a boy named Leo, who lived in a small town tucked away in the valleys. Leo was curious and full of dreams, but he often found himself struggling with one thing: time. Time seemed to slip through his fingers like sand, no matter how hard he tried to hold on to it. His days felt like a whirlwind, a race he could never quite win, and he grew more and more frustrated with his inability to keep up. One day, while wandering through the town, he met an old clockmaker named Mr. Eldon, a quiet, thoughtful man who had spent his life repairing timepieces. His shop was filled with clocks of all shapes and sizes, ticking in perfect harmony, each one telling its own story. Leo had always been fascinated by the clocks, mesmerized by their steady, rhythmic ticking. So he wandered in. Mr. Eldon, noticing the young boy's gaze, invited him to sit and listen to an unusual tale about time. Leo eagerly agreed, hoping to find some secret, some answer that would make time more manageable. Mr. Eldon began by telling Leo about his own journey with time. "I used to be like you, Leo," he said, his eyes twinkling, "always feeling as though there wasn't enough time to do everything I wanted. But as I grew older, I realized that time is like a river. It flows whether we want it to or not. We can't stop it, but we can learn to swim with its current." Leo listened intently, not quite understanding but feeling a strange calm in Mr. Eldon's words. "The trick," Mr. Eldon continued, "is to live within each moment, to give your whole heart to the time you have, and then let it go when it's done." Leo left the shop feeling a little lighter, though he wasn't quite sure why. He continued with his days. Yet he often found himself returning to Mr. Eldon's words, pondering them as he watched the sun rise and set. But the feeling of chasing time persisted. He still felt he was losing it, that it was always just out of reach. Then, one evening, as he wandered down to the riverbank near his home, he saw a girl his age named Mara. She was sitting by the water, tossing pebbles into the current. Intrigued, Leo sat down beside her, watching as each stone disappeared beneath the surface. Mara turned to him and said, "Funny thing about rivers, isn't it? They don't stop for anyone. Just keep moving." Leo, surprised, remembered Mr. Eldon's words. "It's like time," he said, "always moving forward." Mara nodded, "But it's also always right here, now. If you think too much about what's ahead or what's behind, you miss it. All we really have is this moment." Mara's words struck a chord, and Leo found himself seeing time differently. He realized that, like Mara, he needed to live fully in each moment rather than constantly worrying about the future or regretting the past. Slowly, he began to shift his focus. He gave his all to each task, pouring his heart into his schoolwork, his friendships, and even the little things like reading a book or taking a walk. He noticed that his days felt fuller, richer, and that the pressure to keep up faded as he embraced the present. One day, he decided to visit Mr. Eldon to share what he had learned. When he arrived, he found the old clockmaker polishing a large, golden clock. Leo explained how he'd been learning to live in each moment, that he felt less hurried and more at peace. Mr. Eldon smiled, proud of Leo's growth, and said, "You see, time is a gift, Leo. Not because it's infinite, but because it's limited. When we realize that, we start to use it wisely. We stop trying to hoard it, and we start giving it to what truly matters." Leo took these words to heart. As he grew older, he faced many challenges, moments when he felt pulled into many directions. But he always remembered Mr. Eldon's advice and the wisdom he'd gained from Mara by the river. Each time he felt overwhelmed, he returned to the present, finding strength in focusing on what was right in front of him. Years passed, and Leo became a teacher in his town, known for his patience and his deep sense of calm. His students often came to him with worries about their futures, with the same restless energy he had once known. He would listen to them, just as Mr. Eldon had listened to him, and tell them the story of the river and time, passing on the lessons he had learned. His words became a beacon of peace for those who were rushing through life, helping them to slow down and appreciate each moment. In time, Leo became the wise, old figure in the town, much like Mr. Eldon had been for him. He spent his days surrounded by people who cherished his wisdom, each one listening intently as he spoke of time. And though he was no longer young, he felt no regret or hurry, for he had lived each moment as it came, saving each second like a rare treasure. One day, as he sat by the river where he had met Mara all those years ago, he realized that his life had flowed like the river, steady and unstoppable. But he also understood that he had learned to swim with it, to let it carry him rather than struggle against its current. Smiling, he closed his eyes and felt the warmth of the sun, the cool breeze, and the sound of the water, content in the knowledge that he had truly lived within each moment of his life. And so, Leo's story became a part of the town, a reminder to everyone that time was not something to be conquered or chased but a precious gift to be lived fully, one moment at a time. His legacy was not in the years he had lived but in the way he had lived them completely, wholeheartedly, and without regret. And in that, Leo found a peace that no clock could measure, a timeless understanding of what it meant to truly live. As Leo sat by the river, soaking in the tranquility of the present, he thought of all the lives he had touched simply by sharing his story. Over the years, he had guided many of his students, neighbors, and friends through their struggles with time. He had taught them not just to manage time but to understand it, to feel at peace with it, and to respect its flow. A young boy named Ivan, who often visited him, was one of those students. Ivan reminded Leo of his younger self, always in a rush, always thinking about the next thing, always afraid of missing out. Leo had seen Ivan grow from a curious child into a teenager who grappled with the pressures of school and the anxieties of the future. Leo recognized the familiar look in Ivan's eyes, that same restlessness he had once known, and knew he could help. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the hills, casting a warm glow across the town, Ivan came to Leo, his face filled with worry. "Mr. Leo," he began hesitantly, "I feel like there's never enough time. I want to do so much, but I'm afraid I'll never get to it all. What if I miss something important? What if I waste my time?" Leo smiled gently, inviting Ivan to sit beside him. He watched the boy's troubled expression, understanding the weight of his questions. After a moment, Leo placed a comforting hand on Ivan's shoulder and said, "Ivan, time is like this river flowing before us. You can't hold it back, and you can't make it go faster. But you can be present for each part of it, and in that presence, you'll find that there's actually more than enough time." Ivan looked down at the water, trying to understand. Leo continued, "I once met an old clockmaker who taught me that time isn't about racing ahead or holding on to every second. It's about finding peace within each moment. Think of life like a journey down this river. Sometimes the water is calm, and you can drift along, enjoying the view. Other times, you may hit rapids and feel out of control. But each moment has its purpose. And in each, you'll find what you need if you are willing to be fully there." Ivan listened, his brow furrowed as he tried to grasp the meaning. Leo took a deep breath, thinking of all the times he had struggled against time, how he had learned through his own challenges and failures. "When you focus on the future too much," he said softly, "you are not really living. You are somewhere else entirely, somewhere that doesn't exist yet. And when you cling to the past, you are missing what's happening right now. But if you give yourself to the moment, even if it's difficult or uncertain, you'll find a kind of richness in every second. It's not about what you do but how present you are in doing it." For the first time, Leo saw a glimmer of understanding in Ivan's eyes. The boy nodded, his face softening as he looked out over the river. They sat there in silence for a while, each lost in thought, each wrapped in the gentle embrace of the present. Years passed, and Ivan grew into a thoughtful young man, carrying Leo's wisdom with him through every phase of his life. He faced challenges, joys, and losses, each one teaching him new lessons about the flow of time. He learned to embrace the uncertainties, to find joy in simple moments, and to let go when things didn't go as planned. As he matured, he, too, became known for his calm presence and his knack for helping others find peace with time. One day, long after Leo had passed on, Evan found himself sitting by the same riverbank, this time with his own young son by his side. As they watched the water flow, Evan's son asked, "Dad, why does the river never stop? Where does it go?" Evan smiled. The memory of Leo's was echoing in his mind. "It flows on, son, just like time. But it's not about where it's going or where it's been. It's about being here with it, now." And so, the wisdom of time lived on, passed from one heart to another, like the river's endless journey, a quiet reminder of the beauty in each fleeting moment. Evan's son, curious and wide-eyed, gazed at the river, trying to understand what his father had shared. The young boy reached down, picking up a smooth stone and turning it over in his hands, feeling its weight and texture. He looked at his father and asked, "If I throw this stone, will it change the river?" Evan chuckled softly, remembering his own questions to Leo so many years ago. "Not exactly," he said, "but it'll create a ripple, and those ripples will travel out as far as they can. Every moment, every choice we make, leaves its mark, like a ripple in the river. We may not always see where those ripples go, but they are there, touching places we can't even imagine." The boy tossed the stone, watching as it sunk below the surface, sending a delicate ring of ripples across the water. The two of them sat quietly, observing the way the water absorbed the movement, then returned to its steady flow. Evan watched his son's expression, knowing that these early moments of wonder and curiosity were laying the foundation for the years to come. He felt a deep sense of peace knowing that, just as Leo had passed down wisdom to him, he was now able to pass it to his son. The seasons shifted, and Evan's son grew, facing his own moments of doubt, his own battles with the ticking clock. When the pressures of school weighed heavily on him, Evan would remind him of the river and the stone, helping him see that each moment was a chance to create something meaningful. The boy, like his father before him, began to find peace in letting go of the need to control time, learning instead to be present in each experience. As the years turned, Evan became known in his community, much like Leo had been. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers would seek his advice, often coming to him with stories of feeling rushed or overwhelmed, hoping he could offer them a remedy. Evan, with a gentle smile, would tell them of the river, of the stone, and of the lessons he had learned about letting life flow naturally. One day, a young woman named Clara came to him. She was ambitious, full of dreams and plans, yet constantly worried that time was slipping through her hands. She had heard about Evan's wisdom and wanted to understand how she could do it all without feeling so drained. Evan listened patiently, sensing her anxiety and restlessness. After she shared her concerns, he said, "Clara, I once struggled with that same feeling, like I was racing against time. But someone wise taught me that time isn't a battle to win or lose. It's something to experience, like a dance. You can rush through it, but when you do, you miss the beauty of each step." Clara looked at him, her brow furrowed, and he continued, "It's natural to want to do everything, to chase every goal. But if you are always focused on the next step, you'll miss the joy in the one you are taking now. Instead of trying to catch up with time, let yourself move with it. Give each moment your best, and then trust that the rest will follow." Over time, Clara grew into a close friend of Evan's family, visiting often, drawn by the calm that Evan's presence brought to her otherwise fast-paced life. She became part of the fabric of his